Effective listening skills. With communication, both conversation and public speaking, there are two aspects to that conversation. One is the speaker or the sender, and two is the listener or the receiver. So let's take a look today at effective listening skills. First of all, there is a difference between hearing versus listening. Let's take a look at the definitions. Hearing is the vibrations of sound on your eardrums. It does not include cognitive thinking, and that's the key difference between hearing versus listening. Listening is where you make meaning from that sound, where you consciously process what is being said. So now that we know the difference between hearing and listening, let me ask you, do you think you're a good listener? Do you sometimes daydream while other people are talking? Do you remember what the other person said just moments after they tell you? Do you have an issue with interrupting a speaker and you cut that person off in the middle of their thoughts? Do you sometimes think, how am I going to respond in this conversation? These are just some of the things that causes us to be poor listeners. So now let me ask you, why do you think you should care about your listening skills? Common answers that I receive: my job could depend on it, especially if you work in sales or customer service. You could miss important information that's being said. You could miss an opportunity to create a connection with someone. Many times, especially if you're in a meeting, you could be assigned a project and not even realize it. A lot of times too, you can come off as not caring about the individual who's speaking. And another answer I receive is that people like to listen to others because they like it when others listen to them. So now let's talk about the two types of listening. You have passive and active. Passive listening. This is when you're listening while doing other things. You could perhaps be passive listening to this conversation at the moment. You could be on another tab on YouTube or checking your Facebook. That would be passive listening. Passive listening is also listening while thinking about other things. Perhaps you're thinking about what you want to do this weekend, or you're working on that grocery list. Another thing is listening while watching other people around you. Not focusing on the speaker's message, and also not evaluating the message that is being sent. Active listening. We're going to look at active listening as a breakdown on how to improve your listening skills. First thing you want to do is to look at the speaker. You can inquire with questions. Who, what, when. Also, after the speaker is done, summarize your understanding of the subject. If it's a lecture or a classroom setting, you can take notes. Oftentimes, we've already talked about nonverbal communication. You can encourage the speaker with smile, nodding, and just the use of silence. Nonverbal facial communications. Also, if you're listening to a persuasive speech on a subject that you may or may not agree with, try your best to neutralize your feelings. This will help you to stay unbiased and will help make sure that you listen to the full message. When you repeat back to the speaker. Use the same words and phrases. This shows that you are listening, and it also shows that you're on the same train of thought. So how can this be applied in real-life situations? A study from 2004 showed that when a waitress repeats back the order to her customers, she can increase her tips by 70%, simply by showing active listening. Other tips for great listening. Maintain eye contact. When you're looking around, you're giving off the nonverbal cue that you're distracted. Also, try your best to minimize external distractions. If you tend to be a people watcher, try not to have your conversations in public, where you're more tempted to watch other people around you. Make sure, too, that as a listener, you respond appropriately. Try your best to focus entirely on what the speaker is saying. Also, ignore internal distractions. These would be, oh, I'm hungry, oh, I'm tired, oh, I've got so much to do. Try to push all that to the back and focus in on the conversation or the speech that's being presented. These are all tips on how to increase your listening skills.